Yes, we have Screen Violence by Churches, 10 songs, 43 minutes long, substantially better than
CHVRCHES.
CHVRCHES. And Churches have been really interesting. I generally liked them a lot, but when we reviewed Love is Dead in
I did not like
2018,
Love is Dead at all.
yeah, I remember thinking it was definitely a step backwards. Like it felt like a little too much of a trying to do a modern spin on some of the like whiniest emo pop
Hmm.
punk of the late 2000s essentially. It just didn't really match and didn't really fit right. And so I think on this album here, it's only 3 songs fewer and it's barely 10 minutes shorter, not even that, but I feel like they stripped a little bit back to basics, getting to how they really work as a group, and also just the songwriting in
It's
here is
much
stellar.
better. It is
um
fantastic.
and yeah, this all comes down together to being a really good project. So you want to kind of jump in and lead?
Yeah, so again, like their album that came a couple years ago that we reviewed, same thing. I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was a step in the wrong direction for them. But this album, when I heard the track "How Not to Drown" with featuring The Cure's Robert Smith, um, I thought that was an interesting sound that they were going for. I was like, okay, let's see. Obviously, we judge a track really in its entirety when we have it throughout the whole project that it's supposed to be in, so it makes better context. But it was kind of when I heard that, okay, this would be a step in the right direction. And then listening through the album, like, wow, yeah, they really nailed this album. Starting off the opening track, it's a long opening track, asking for a friend at about 5 minutes long, but I think it's a really good opening sound of what they want to do. They're back to those beautiful, gorgeous synths, those really good like indie electronica, which I have a soft spot for because it's one of my favorite genres naturally. But the vocals are fantastic on it. Everything on that track really gets you into the lyricism. Everything's like, wow, okay, they're back to what they did before, but even pushing it a little bit more forward. Having kind of sounds like they have a little chip on their shoulder a little bit maybe throughout the whole album, which is something that could be good or could be bad depending on the artist. If you're Kanye, have a chip on your shoulder, probably not a good thing. If your church is probably a good thing. So
Yeah,
um,
if that motivates you to improve your work, it's a good thing.
yes, exactly. Um, Second track, he said, she said, also great. It grew on me the first listen I heard it. I didn't necessarily like it too much because they had like infused indie electronica with a little bit of like some trap beats and other stuff. I didn't really like it that much. But then second time through, I was like, okay, I can kind of get on board with it. But it's still probably my least favorite track on the album, maybe. But
I I mean,
um,
we did this as new singles, and it's not my favorite song on the album, but it's one of my favorites. And I think it's sort of where you get to the part of the songwriting aspect. I said this is when we did new singles that he said she said, it's kind of like that song about like people
mhm.
having different stories and these kind of
Oh yeah, the
things.
lyrics
And
is fantastic.
yeah, it
Fantastic.
goes to like a depth and a level in these things that like you don't always see in like popular facing music, right? But it's
Yes,
really well executed there. Also well executed California's as well, but
California's.
afterwards is Violent Delights. I
Hmm.
love the way the drums are really punchy in that song. I love just how energetic it feels while also feeling like passionate and powerful. Like it has like the emotion and raw energy of like a really slow song, but it also feels just like energetic and powerful and intense with the drums making it go faster. So I think
Hmm.
there's a really good mix and execution there in Violent Delights, especially. But yeah, I very much like a lot of this album.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of The Naked and Famous of their album that came out last year. Kind of that sound, but even polished a little bit more per se in there, which I've thoroughly enjoyed that album last year a lot. So it's great because the indie electronic I think was kind of missing a little bit here or there. You had some artists that were making some stuff, but it wasn't anything like that was exploding into it. And I know that churches were coming out with it. I'm like, okay, this could kind of steamroll this back up again. And By the Delight's a fantastic track. Right after that, you have How Not to Drown with Robert Smith, which I really, really enjoy that track. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was a really good. I mean, Robert Smith's a little bit kind of like doing some really nice modern collabs and bringing his own thing
Yeah, he
together.
is. He's not being Uncle Rocky at all. Which, like, even with Gorillas, when they had him up, I was like, "Well, this is gonna be interesting to see what he does." His voice is still very good, and he kind of fits himself to fit within whatever project he's doing, which is good to see for somebody who's been making music for I don't know 30, 30 plus years, 40 years.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Um, I really like my favorite song in the album is Final Girl, but like I've talked a lot about a lot of these things. Again, I think topically it's sort of like addressing sort of like a trope in movies and things like that, and then taking it out lyrically in a song really well done. But Lullabies near the end because I think I don't know. Kanye took a lot of my brain power from the rest of like the reviews here, so I can't best answer this question unfortunately. But I don't think this album is top heavy. I just really like a lot
No,
of how it begins. I think,
no, it's not top heavy
yeah,
at all.
when you get to like Final Girl is a really good track, kind of getting you to the end of the album. Again, this album doesn't really get slow. It just like changes energies from being a little bit higher tempo, a little bit lower tempo. It's like Lullabies is maybe like one of the quieter songs, but still has like a,
But still, it's still upbeat.
yeah, it's like a
Yeah, no,
heartbeat kind of
it's
beat
definitely
pace.
it's an interesting album because it flows very well. We tend to like more of the tracks up top, but that's not to say it's top heavy necessarily. It's just the way that our brains work and just our personal preferences per se. But the rest of the album is still fantastic. It flows well. The production on it still uphold. And again, like what's interesting too is like this track like Lullabies on any other album, this would be like a really upbeat, like high paced song. But then for this context, this album, it's where it slows down a tiny bit, but it's not even a slow song. But that's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing either. They've managed to make an album where you can keep a solid pace throughout it, but it's not going to overwhelm you or it's not going to bore you out either. Because you can very easily make an album, get up to one level up here and then just sustain that level the entire time and you get annoyed or bored with it because it's just that and you're like, okay, there's nothing else. But they managed to do with it with their lyricism and the production to make you feel sucked in and engaged throughout the entirety of the album.
Yeah. Sorry, yawn. But it was really well executed, and I like how the tempo choice they made, the production choices they made on just a surface level with the album. It keeps you engaged and keeps you going, and makes it so you can kind of get through the project, which isn't long by any means, but feels pretty complete at 42 minutes. Could maybe even have used an extra song. But it's definitely a market improvement in a broader context to like CHVRCHES' discography and kind of a return to form, if you will, of like how they really were in like 2013, 2015, which is like really, really solid production in the alternative music space, taking what was good and alternative at the time and just kind of building upon it and growing on that. And this album does that in 2021. So it's really good step in the right direction for CHVRCHES, and it's one of their better albums to date, I would say.
Yes, yeah, I'm impressed with them. I'm glad because I was worried after Love Is Dead that they had just hit like a couple good things and that was it. But no, they proved that they still have a lot more ideas in there, a lot more stuff that they can make and produce. A fantastic record. Really enjoyed it.
Arbitrary scale this week on Audioface is Joe Biden falling asleep in front of world leaders. And I'm going to give this Joe Biden falling asleep in front of Justin Trudeau, because that'd just be like it'd be a funny moment. Justin would have some funny neoliberal quip about it or something. I don't know. One of those like fake politician jokes that politicians do to try to seem approachable, but it ends up sounding like the joke, like the kind of dad joke a dad would make if your dad happened to do blackface in the past. And yeah, what are you getting with this?
This is Joe Biden falling asleep in front of Angela Merkel. Like Angela Merkel is like she's done after this. She's like, you know what? I gotta do one more sit down with the U.S. president, and then he falls asleep on me. He's like, fucking great.
Now this is worse than Trump.